Welcome to this video tutorial from SPSSVideoTutor.com. I'm Jacob Mays, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to input data manually into SPSS. There are 4 steps to manually input data into SPSS. The first step is to number your questionnaires. If you have 50 questionnaires, each questionnaire should have its own unique number from 1 to 50. The reason why this is important is because you need to be able to include an ID number in your SPSS file so that you can connect your respondent data to a questionnaire. So let's say you're checking your data using frequencies and you see that you've made a mistake on one of your variables. Okay, you've input the wrong number. If you don't have an ID number, then it's very difficult for you to go back and find the correct questionnaire so that you can input the correct number. Okay? The next step is to create a code book. The third step is to define your variables in SPSS. And the final step is input your data. Let's go into steps 2, 3, and 4 in more detail. A code book is a blank questionnaire, meaning it has no responses, where you define how you're going to code your questions and your answers in SPSS. Okay? So let's go to our code book and I will demonstrate what this is. Now, so I've created a code book for this sample questionnaire. And the code book tells you a couple of different things. Okay, so for the first question, which is age, we have Q1. So this is going to be our variable name. Okay, so for each one of these, we determine what our variable name is going to be. Now, the second thing that the code book tells us is how we're going to code individual responses. Okay, so for age, if someone says they're 18 to 24, we're going to code them as a 1. If someone says that they're 25 to 29, under Q1, we're going to give them a 2. 30 to 34 in the Q1, we're going to give them a 3. 35 and older, a 4. Okay? Now let me say this before I go any further. Do not type in text in SPSS. So for example, don't type in 18-24 or female, F-E-M-A-L-E. SPSS is a quantitative analytic tool. That means you need to convert everything you can to numbers. And that's what the code book process is for. Okay? Now, continuing on. So our second question is gender. And we're going to code that Q2, question 2. Okay? And under question 2, we're going to code females as 1 and males as 2. Now, single select categorical. This means that your answers are categorical and you can only select one. Okay? Same thing for age. Your answers are categorical and you can only select one. So it's a single select categorical variable. Okay? It's a multiple choice question where you select only one option, and it's a categorical variable. Same thing for number 2. Number 3, again, it's a single select categorical variable. So level of education is going to be coded or as Q3 as the variable name, and some high school education is going to be coded as 1, high school diploma 2, all the way up to 6, which is other. Now, you want to code your lowest values with low numbers and your highest values with high numbers. Okay, so the lowest ages get a 1, the higher ages get a 4, which is the highest value. Now for gender, there's no high or low value, so the codes can be arbitrary. All right, same thing for level of education. The low levels of education get low scores, the high levels of education get high scores. All right, now for number 4, our continuous rating scale, we're going to code this as Q4 for our variable name, and we're just going to plug in the value that they give us. Okay, so if they give us a 10, then we're simply going to type 10 into the SPSS data file. All right. For number 5, it's a little different. This is what you call a multiple select categorical variable. Again, your answers are categorical, but you can select multiple responses. All right. It says below select the topics that you covered in your statistics class. So the way we code multiple selects of this nature is as follows. If they select it or check it, it gets a 1. If they don't select it, it gets a 0. Okay, so these are dichotomously coded variables. It's either they had the class or they had the topic or they didn't. Okay, same thing for dependent sample test. If they had this in their class, it gets a 1. If they didn't, it gets a 0. Now, because each one of these individual responses is getting a code, it has to be labeled as its own variable. Okay? So independent sample t-test gets a code. So therefore, it is going to be coded Q5A under question 5. Right? So it's question 5A. Dependent sample test Q5B. Bivariate correlation Q5C. Multiple regression Q5D. These are all options under question number 5, and the letters just indicate their order in the question. All right? Same thing for number 6. You have a situation where each of the components receives a rating. Okay? Because each one of these gets a rating, then it has to be coded as its own variable. Okay, under question 6. So it's Q6A, Q6B, Q6C. This will make more sense when I start coding this in SPSS. Once we have coded our questionnaire and created a code book, we go to our SPSS data file. Okay, and we start out with a blank slate and we go to variable view. Our first variable is going to be ID. Okay? Our second variable is going to be question 1, which is age. So under name, we go Q1, click enter, decimals, just change it to 0, label, and we're just going to label this as age. Okay? And then under values, the values are here. So 1 equals 18 to 24. 2 equals 25 to 29. 3 equals 30 to 34. Click add. And then 4 equals 35 or older. We click add and then we click OK. And then you click save. Okay? Every time you add a new variable, you want to click save. Now, so then we go to the second one, which is gender. So that's going to be Q2. Okay? It's numeric. And then we're going to type in gender. And then values 1 for female, 2 for male. Click OK. And then save. Okay? And then you do the same thing for Q3. Okay? Now, for number 4, Q4, again, click enter. And then this one is simply how challenging is stats class. And then the values, there's no values because this is a continuous variable, right? So there's no values that need to go in here, okay? And then for number 5, okay, we see here that we have 4 variables. So it's Q5A, and then we're going to type in independent dependent sample t-test, and then Q5B is going to be dependent sample t-test. Okay, so a 0 is not selected and a 1 is selected. Click OK, and then we can just hit copy and then paste. So as you can see, I've added the 4 responses under question 5 and have labeled them accordingly. Okay, and then you go on to question 6, and again this one has 3 options, so it's Q6A, and then we've got handouts. Now since this one is a continuous variable, there are no values. Okay, so Q6B, enter text books, and then Q6C, videos. Okay, so now that you have set up your data file, now you can begin entering data. Okay, so the third step is entering data. Okay, so the first step was creating a code book. The second step was setting up your data file, and now the third step is going to actually input data. So now we go to a sample survey that has the respondent ID of number 1. Okay, so originally we were on variable view, now we go to data view, and this is respondent 1. Okay, so look what SPSS did. So when we put in our variables, the variables are along the top, so each column is a variable. Okay, now the rows are respondents. Okay, so the respondent number 1 is ID 1. Okay, and then for age, they were 25 to 29. So we know that if someone's 25 to 29, they get a 2. Okay, so we put a 2 there, and then for question 2, they are female, so they get a 1, and then for question 3, they have an advanced degree, so that's number 5, and for question 4, they rated level of challenge a 4, so we're going to put 4 there. And then for question 5A, they did not select this because it's not bold, so they get a 0. Okay, for question 5A. For question 5B, they get a 1, okay, because I've actually darkened this or made it bold. Okay, question 5C, they selected bivariate correlation, so they get a 1 there. Question 5D, multiple regression, they get a 1 there. Okay, now for question 6A through C, this respondent number 1 gave a 9. For textbooks, they gave an 8, and then for videos, they gave an 8. Okay, so our first respondent's data has been entered. If you have any questions, please submit them to jacob@spssvideotutor.com. This has been a video tutorial from SPSSvideotutor.com. Thank you for watching, and much success with SPSS.